Director of Product for Programmable Voice. And we're here today to talk about building a voice product for fun and profit. So when you come to tech conferences, you often hear, hey, I'm not here to sell you something. But when you think about it a little bit more, it's almost always false, right? They're conferences. So I'm going to start by saying, I'm here to sell you something, but I'm here to sell you something different. I'm here to sell you a new revenue stream for your product. So if you're the CEO, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a product manager of a software as a service business, I'm here to sell you the idea of building voice into your product and creating a new revenue stream. And we're going to touch on all the aspects of how to productize voice. I've worked with customers, with entrepreneurs, with CEOs over the years, and in this talk, I'll share what I've learned working with many entrepreneurs that have successfully built voice products. But let's start by this. Why voice? Voice is the most natural way we communicate, right? It's the most efficient way we communicate. But when you think about like the history of real-time communications and telephony, we go back to Alexander Graham Bell and the first telephone, right? It was a single-purpose function. We took that world, we built that into what we used to know as telephones, single-purpose devices that just kind of work parallel to everything else. And that's the thing with communications. It's been kind of this parallel track of technology that kind of never fully integrated. And we took the phones and we took that to the world of apps, right? And we created single-purpose apps to communicate, right? And then you ask yourself, like, what about the rest of the apps? Can't the rest of the web applications and mobile applications in the world communicate? Is that an exclusive thing of the communications app? And our vision at Twilio is that communications should be a part of every experience and should be built into every product. It shouldn't have to be a separate function. It shouldn't need a purpose-specific app or device. And that's where programmable voice comes in. Programmable voice is the platform that enables you to integrate phone calls into your application, giving your application communication superpowers. And we'll see what that means, but more importantly, we'll see what product you can build and how to take it to market. So when we talk about productizing voice, we're going to look about the product, we're going to talk about pricing, and we're going to talk about go-to-market. And how these three things are interrelated with each other and how they come together. So let's start by talking about the product. And when you talk about products, it's always good to see, okay, what have other companies built? So we have three small companies: Salesforce, Zendesk, and Velocify. As of last week, Velocify was acquired, so this makes this technically all publicly listed multi-billion-dollar companies who have built voice products into their SaaS or their software as a service offering. For example, Salesforce. This is Lightning Voice. This is the contact page. You click the phone, and magic, Salesforce makes a call. It's just so natural. They kick off the dialer here. It's fully integrated into their web application. And what more natural if you're a CRM than being able to click a phone number and make a call right there from your CRM where you have all the context. Or for example, Zendesk. You get an incoming call for customer support and automatically creates the ticket. So you can follow up with that customer, you can write your public notes, you can tag, you can do whatever you want within the context of customer support. Or Velocify, that helps you manage and contact your leads. It's a lead management application. So here you have all the leads, and then you organize them into a calling list, and you call those leads right there from your application. You add notes, and you have like a lot of things like optimize kind of to go one by one and contact those leads as effectively as possible. So those are just a couple of examples of software as a service companies that have productized voice pretty successfully into their broader offering. And normally they offer it as an additional product. So, and then when you think about what they're doing and what's the core, what's the value proposition of what they're doing, you can think about the value props in two different angles. The first one is a value prop like, we help you acquire more customers. That's, for example, what Velocify does, right? Helps you acquire customers. Or the second value prop is helps you keep your customers happy, right? That's what Zendesk does. Helps you keep your customers happy. So what we're going to do is that we're going to break these down, and we're going to see what is the product that makes sense for each of these value props, and what are the voice capabilities that you can build into your product that align with these value props. So as we go through the roadmap and you're thinking, what are those things that I can build? You can use this framework depending on which value prop you want to target, and you can get a pretty good idea of what those capabilities are. So let's start with acquiring new customers. For any of you who have worked in go-to-market, kind of generally there's inbound and outbound. So we'll treat this the same way. If you have an inbound funnel through advertising, through brand, whatever you generate that inbound funnel, there's a couple of really, really valuable things that you can build here. The first one, and probably the most powerful one, is call tracking. So for those of you who don't know, call tracking allows you to track the effectiveness of your advertising. You know that saying that half of your advertising doesn't work, but you don't know which half? Well, call tracking completely solves that problem. By putting phone numbers, different phone numbers on your different ads, you know how many calls you're receiving through each of your advertising channels. And one interesting thing about voice, I don't know if you guys know, a lead that is on a phone call is 10 times more valuable than a lead that's kind of on paper. So if you have somebody who's going to buy a life insurance and you have that person on the phone, that lead is incredibly, incredibly valuable. So what you want to do with that lead is directly forward that call, send that call to your call center, use call forwarding for that. But sometimes you don't know if the lead is really good or not. So you can do a lead qualification IVR, where you can ask a couple of questions. For example, if you're buying a house, like, have you already been pre-approved? Have you selected the property, or are you starting the search? So you can get a pretty good idea where that lead is with a couple of simple questions, and that will let you route the call better. And some SaaS companies also do agent-based lead qualification, where an actual agent talks to the customer, asks a couple of questions, and then they route the call. So acquiring new customers, inbound funnel, kind of like the key feature there is call tracking and everything that flows down from that. For outbound, if you're doing outbound campaigns, outbound campaigns are kind of similar to the Velocify example and to the Salesforce example we saw, like CRM dialing. You've got your contacts, your leads, you're calling them. So CRM dialing is something very, very natural to build in that case. The second one are dialing lists, where you want to put a set of contacts together and have one or multiple inside sales reps just call those contacts. Local presence. So this one is a key one. When you get a phone call, there's always a from number that shows up in your caller ID. Local presence is the technique of adapting the from number that you use to make that call so it's as close as possible as the person you are calling. So it appears like it's from a local call, right? So if you're calling somebody in London, you use a London number so it appears that it's a local call. And that alone increases the effectiveness of the outbound campaigns. And lastly, Some people are not gonna pick up their phones. So with answering machine detection, you can detect that's an answering machine, and you can do a voicemail drop and leave a message. So this is the roadmap on the kind of customer acquisition side of the value prop. In the other side of the value prop of keeping existing customers happy, right? So just like Zendesk or any customer support help desk type of software service, that's the core business. Inbound customer service, we talked a little bit about call steering this morning in the keynote. Jeff's example of like sales support. That's exactly what call steering is. You can do call steering with speech recognition, with understand, with an incredibly efficient call distribution. The next thing you need is an agent soft phone. So similar to Zendesk, where you have a UI where the agent actually takes the phone, right? And you want that to be integrated into your app. You want the call to come in and your app to query all the details you know about that caller, show them to the agent in context, and have a fully integrated experience. You want, as your operation gets more sophisticated, you have different agents with different skill sets. So you might have level 1, level 2, and level 3 support in English, German, French, and Spanish, right? And you want to be able to match that, match those capabilities with the callers coming in. That's where Task Router comes in. You set the worker attributes, and you set the task attributes, and Task Router automatically distributes the calls. And lastly, supervisor monitoring. Agent monitoring and training is one of the biggest challenges with customer service. So supervisor monitoring using Agent Conference enables you to do coaching, where the supervisor is able to listen to a conversation between an agent and a customer, and talk to the agent while the customer doesn't hear the supervisor. That makes sense. So it's a 3-party call, but it's asymmetric. Only the agent can hear the supervisor. So that's kind of some of the most powerful functionality that you can build if you are in kind of the customer service, customer support space. But also you can keep your existing customers happy with proactive notifications. When critical things happen in your account, you can use voice notifications to let them know that something happened. One really cool thing about voice notifications is that you can, first of all, you can do the voicemail drop, right? And you can do receipt acknowledgement. You can actually play an IVR or an interactive voice response or say, hey, press 1 to confirm the receipt of this notification, press 2 to talk to an agent, and if they press 2 to talk to an agent, you've got your inbound funnel there. So kind of all this comes together. So it's like a much richer engagement when you send a voice notification. So if you're an entrepreneur, a CEO, a product manager, looking and thinking about building a voice product, this is a really good place to start with your roadmap. And one thing I'll strongly recommend is, as you think about your roadmap, think about aligning your roadmap with the value prop that you're targeting. I see a lot of people trying to do this, right? And then like you're just spread too thin all over the place. So when you think about your roadmap, try to approach your roadmap like this. Just tackle one value prop at a time, and you'll have much better impact. So pricing. Pricing, I have to say, working in voice and in general in product management, pricing is one of my favorite topics. And one thing when I talk to entrepreneurs, one thing I always realize is that pricing normally comes as an afterthought. Like they build a really cool product and it's like, wow, how should I price it? And pricing should be at the very beginning. And when I ask entrepreneurs, hey, how should I price my product? I normally get this. And it's no joke. Nobody thinks about pricing, and you should think about your pricing model first. It's like that's how you're going to capture value. So we're going to talk about 3 pricing models. And these are specifically tailored for voice, obviously. The first one, per minute pricing, right? Per user pricing and per business transaction pricing. So we'll do a deep dive on each of these so you know what are the benefits and the key considerations for each. So about per minute pricing. One of the cool things about per minute pricing is that it's super easy to understand. Everybody gets it. Charge per minute, it's like, say, 1 penny. You're kind of used to the per minute pricing, like prepaid cell phones and your cell phone plan. You kind of get the concept. It has a direct mapping with your cost structure, right? Twilio as a kind of broad and horizontal platform charges per minute. So it maps perfectly with what Twilio charges. And then obviously every single country has a different price. Every type of call has a different price. So whether you're doing local, mobile calling, that's different price, but it's all the same, it's minutes, so it's easy to expand internationally. So key considerations, if you do like literally pay per minute or monthly packages. Right. If you do pay per minute, every call, say it's 1 second, you cannot hit the credit card processor for 1 penny, right? Let's say the call is 1 penny, you cannot hit the credit card processor for every penny somebody spends on your product. So you need to build some sort of credit system, right? Where you load up credits, say you pay £10, load up credits, and then you deduct from that credit system. And then you hit the credit card processor with £10 rather than a penny. And you need to take into consideration mobile and local calls, right? The prices of calling local phones is dramatically different than the prices of calling mobile. So let's take a look at an example. This is call tracking metrics. It's one of a really successful call tracking software as a service company. They charge like a monthly fee for like the general platform that they offer, and then they do per minute pricing. So you can see they have a price for local, mobile, toll-free, and they charge per minute. It's super easy to understand. Per user. So per user is interesting. Per user, one of the things I like the most about per user is that it maps really well when you have a SaaS business that already charges per user, right? So if you already have a user fee, this is kind of pretty natural. You can have a voice add-on for that user fee, and it maps pretty well. The key questions here are like, how many minutes? How should I think about the cost here? And I'll give you a couple of ways to think about it. Given that it's one user, right, and a person can only speak so much on the phone. If you talk for 4 hours a day times 20 days a month, that is roughly like a professional agent who's like on the phone a lot, right? It's 4,800 minutes, 4,800 minutes. If you take that being like half local, half inbound, that's like 48 pounds. And that is the most extreme case of somebody being on the phone like pretty much all their working time. Obviously, agents take breaks, write notes, write summaries of the calls. So they're actually not that, they're not on the phone all the time. So 4 hours is actually on the very high side. And that's kind of what you need to think about. Like, what's the level of usage? Is it a professional agent or not? And let's look at how Salesforce did it, for example. So they have 25 users per month. And then they have this light inbound where they enable for $5 per month for users to receive calls. The $25 includes 1,000 minutes. So they're clearly assuming that this is not a professional agent, right? This is a Salesforce user who's just Salesforce, like sales rep calling its contacts, right? And if you run out of minutes, you can purchase more minutes with like those additional 1,000-minute packages that they offer. But it makes the pricing super simple, right? Salesforce charges per seat. They have the dialer outbound. It's an additional fee per seat. Maps perfectly with their go-to-market. And the last one is per business transaction. So this one, obviously, it's highly dependent on what that business transaction actually is. But you can think about Uber, right? When you call an Uber, you call the driver, Uber is not charging you for the call. The call is kind of baked into the ride. And so it's perfectly aligned with how you perceive and how you get that value from a customer perspective. And it's fully integrated with the experience. So you're not charging for the call itself, you're baking the call into a broader experience. And I think that's what works so well with Uber. So a couple of things you need to think about there. Like, when are the calls made, right? Uber, when a driver doesn't find the passenger, that's when a driver calls you. Uber knows exactly what percentage of calls per city go out. So what percentage of rides need a call versus don't need a call, so they know exactly how to bake this into their overall costs. But also, like, how long is the transaction, right? An Uber, 30 minutes, say, right? It's like clear beginning, clear end. If you think about Airbnb, slightly different, right? You make a reservation 5 weeks in advance, and you might have a different time window. So you just need to think about how long and when you want communications enabled in those business transactions, and what are those limits. And lastly, what privacy features you want to explore and want to implement here. For example, the not letting the drivers see the passenger's number is a big one. So we talked about Uber's probably the best example here. And that's pricing. So to recap on pricing, per minute pricing, easy to understand. You have to count the minutes. If you do pay per minute, you have to implement a credit system. Per user pricing maps really, really well with per seat software as a service pricing, but you have to figure out the minute package that you want to include and how big or not, and that's going to depend on your target customer. And per business transaction aligns perfectly with value creation, but you have to have a very, very clear definition of what that business transaction is. Okay, so we've talked about product, we've talked about pricing, and really the thing that brings everything together and is the go-to-market strategy. So we have a product, we know how to price it, and now we need to get out there. So what does a focused go-to-market strategy look like? The first thing, always look at what's the market opportunity and how do we segment that market, right? What are the slices that you can find in that market to focus on? And once you find the different segments, you think about what are the table stakes features, kind of like that we have to play in that market, and what are the differentiating capabilities? What sets us apart there? Do we have strong reference customers? Are they? And one thing is to have customers, and another thing is to have those customers be referenceable. Do we have strong inbound content? And do we have a strong outbound network? Do we know a lot of people? Do we have reps that know a lot of people in the space? So let me walk through an example of the lead management software as a service so you can see how this framework works. Imagine lead management. So there's tons of industries that need lead management capabilities. Here are just a few: life insurance, mortgages, credit cards, health insurance, home alarms, right? Very different segments. So we talked about all these things: market opportunity, table stakes features, differentiating features, reference customers, inbound content, and outbound network, right? So here's the key to this framework. For each of these, you color code them. You don't need to go all that crazy, but you just need to know a relative sense. You're only allowed one green per column, so there's one market that's always bigger. And then you color code them all based on your understanding of the market, on your product readiness, on your customer base, on your content readiness, and on your network. And then you end up with something like this. It looks like a Christmas tree. But, and here's the key. This framework will dictate how and when to invest. So credit cards, say in yellow in terms of market, but it seems that we have all the features there to go to market. We have decent content, we have decent reference customers, and we know a lot of people in the credit card business. It's like, you can throw sales, right? Like, this is a product you can sell. What I see a lot of entrepreneurs do is throw sales teams when there's a big opportunity and just the market is not, the product is not there and the go-to-market is not there. And then the efficiency of that sales team, like, it's gonna suffer. The second thing is like, where do you need to invest in go-to-market, right? So, it seems like health insurance, like, we're pretty far along on the product. We might need a couple of things here and there, but like the product is almost there, but we have like no content and nothing on health insurance. So we're working really hard to get a reference customer to get that content that is relevant for that particular segment is super, super important. And then lastly, it's like, where should we invest in the product? It's like, have big market opportunity and my product is in red. That's probably a really good place to invest in the product, right? And the product obviously is your biggest leverage, but it's also your most expensive leverage, right? Putting your engineering team at work, it's gonna cost you a lot of money. So this framework for go-to-market really brings it together. It ties back with your product capabilities and your pricing. And something that I encourage all the entrepreneurs and all the CEOs in the room to think about when they're thinking on how to bring and how to build voice into their products. So on productizing voice, we covered the product, talked about the roadmap and how to align the roadmap with your value prop. We talked about the different pricing models and when to use each of the pricing models and what are the key considerations. And we talked about the go-to-market strategy and how all of these relate to each other. So before I leave, 3 takeaways. Remember, here to sell you a revenue stream. Voice is a great opportunity for your product. Multi-billion-dollar public companies have taken this opportunity, like Salesforce, like Zendesk, like Velocify. The value prop drives your roadmap. Make sure you work through the roadmap aligned to the value prop and that you don't spread yourself too thin across too many value props. And align the pricing as much as you can with the customer value. So that's all. Thank you very much. I'm Nico Acosta. I'll be around for any questions.